Okay, just gone top of the hour here in Robinson Road, Singapore. Thank you for joining us for the PitchMark webinar on how to deter idea theft and actually get paid for your ideas. I'm Mark Laudy, and in the next hour or so, we will walk through what IP is, how to protect it if you can, and what to do if you can't. And of course, critically, how to actually make money from your ideas. So we are looking in essence at two prongs of the idea generation and transmission cycle. First, at the point of creation, to deter others from stealing your creations. And second, of course, is to actually then commercialize the idea and collect license revenues. So we'll cover all of that. Happy to take your questions at any time. Just drop them here into Zoom chat, and I will come to them as and when you pop your question in. You can also raise hand and unmute, and then we can actually have a conversation here on Zoom. On screen, you're already seeing the contributions from a variety of you before our webinar and again today. I must say, upcycled designs has not in the past been something that we've come across here at PitchMark, but hey, graphic designs of all sorts have definitely featured over the months and years that we've been doing this. Recycled handmade crafts. It sounds so ultra creative. And let's see, there's one other in here. Let's see, business solutions, creative consulting, networking products, business solutions, games, and game creation. Awesome. Glad to have you all with us. And thank you for joining us this afternoon. Shakir is also just dialed in. Welcome to the show. If you haven't yet responded, I'm going to give you just maybe 1 or 2 moments to also contribute to this graphic. PitchMark in general takes care of your IP in whatever form it comes, but come in a form it must. Ideas can famously not be protected on their own. It is only the written expression of ideas that can. And while this seems like a rather pedantic difference, it is an important one. So we're here today to ensure that whatever the expression is of your idea, whether it's a graphic, text perhaps, music, photography, whatever the creativity is that you have, however you're expressing it, you're able to use PitchMark to deter idea theft. Okay, now there's a second question that we asked you before today, and we got a few answers, some of them admittedly rather shocking. If you haven't yet answered this question, here's your chance. Hit refresh or go to slide on your phone, or simply scan the QR code again and let us know. Have you had your ideas gone walking in the past? Have you had prospects or clients take your ideas? I'll give you just a couple of moments to add your vote. All right. Well, so far it's 50-50. Admittedly, when we run this webinar, which is about once a month, we have a variety of responses, but usually it's either happened to people all the time or it's happened to them on a couple of occasions at least. So we see lots of reds and orange or mango colored yellow on the screen rather than green. But hey, isn't that the point? Prevention is better than the cure. So hopefully this doesn't happen to you at all, and you don't ever have the situation of recognizing your work in the public domain, and even though you didn't get it there. Final chance to scan the QR code and add your voice. We do have a series of other questions coming your way fairly shortly. Meantime, we say good afternoon to May, and Jason, among others. Welcome also to the PitchMark webcast. So get out your phone and vote. Have you had clients or prospects steal your ideas in the past? Another couple of moments just to give you a chance to vote. Okay, more responses coming in. I'll be navigating away from the screen shortly, so please get your votes in now. Once again, quite relieved to see so many of you have not had this happen before. And of course, our job at PitchMark is to make sure it doesn't happen to you at all, or it doesn't happen to you again. Just a couple of more questions to ask you on what sort of IP theft you've had, and look at some of the contributions that we've had from some of you before at the start of our webinar today. Check out some of these. Gosh, these really are horror stories, aren't they? Check this one out. Wow, that's a terrible story. Went ahead to implement it themselves. Goodness, I'm so sorry to hear that. Not the first time I've heard it, I have to say. But gosh, don't you always get a shock when you then see your materials online somewhere, or perhaps even on a big billboard somewhere? Here's the other comment that we took in from you. Gosh, how did they think they were going to get away with that? And presumably you then had a phone conversation with them about what was going on. But of course, by that stage, it's a bit too late, isn't it? The horse has already bolted, so to speak. Yeah, prevention always better than the cure. And that's the premise for us at PitchMark as well. If we can deter people from ripping off the idea, then we save ourselves an incredible amount of time, money, energy, and frankly, frustration. Just like the steering lock on a car. If you have a thief who's walking through the car park ready to break into cars and steal them, having a steering wheel lock on your car will hopefully make them move on to another vehicle and save you the whole trouble of getting a window replaced or getting the whole car replaced if they take off with it. So a steering wheel lock is a small price to pay to deter that sort of theft of your car. And the same happens with ideas. Getting a PitchMark certificate for your drawing, your text, your video, your music before you send it off to the client is a small price to pay to deter them from ripping off your ideas. Steal your idea and try to run with it, you wrote. Well, thank you for these contributions. I'm navigating away from the screen shortly, so please feel free to add your comments now. Thank you. You've added this one. Requested to answer a few questions. Didn't get the job. Well, you know what? Thank you for submitting this one. We're hearing this one now all the time. All the time. It started with one or two, and now it seems that we're getting quite a rush of these. Didn't get the job, but you attended the interview. They asked you a few questions, asked you for a few ideas, and even though you didn't get the job, didn't get paid, they went with them anyway. Well, I know it's cold comfort, but if the company is going to act like that, then it's probably just as well that you didn't start working there, right? You can imagine what that would have been like. But clearly that's cold comfort if you actually did dish up a really good idea, prepared well for the interview, and hoped to wow them with your innovative prowess, only to then have them take the idea. So sorry to hear it. Well, hopefully you'll find a better source of employment than whoever this company was. Yeah, so more of these stories this is the sort of stories that we hear more and more of all the time. Navigating now to the next graphic and another couple of questions. Here's a question to test your legal knowledge. So far, 100% say no. One of you's now voted mostly. Yep, and there certainly are some legal remedies that you can avail if you've been ripped off, or perhaps some legal paper to wave in people's faces to deter them. That's, of course, part of the reason why PitchMark exists, to ensure that you have documented evidence of your submission to PitchMark that you can then wave at them. But yeah, most of you have voted that no, the law doesn't protect you fully, and that's been our experience as well. Not for a lack of trying, but it is clearly a very complicated story, especially with the advent of AI and the question of who owns the copyright or the intellectual property rights to materials that you produce using AI. There was a famous photo of a monkey previously, where the monkey had pointed the camera at itself, pressed the button and taken a photo, and it was deemed that the photographer, the person who owned the camera, did not have the copyright because the monkey took the photo. So that it does get rather complicated on occasion. And that's, of course, also why we're here. Which brings me to this last slide, and that is simply to figure out where you're at so we can tune our conversation to the country that you're in. Please use the world map to let us know where you're dialing in from. Again, give you a couple of moments to answer. Good. Most of you seem to be from sunny Singapore, or as it is today, a rather overcast Singapore. Good to have you with us today. Well, let's see. 11 minutes past the hour. In the next 20 minutes, we're going to be reflecting more on those IP laws that we just talked about a few moments ago. And we'll also walk through precisely what to do when you have an idea that you want to pass on to a prospect or client. You want the customer to like the idea. You want them to like you. You want them to buy from you. You want them to like the idea so much that hopefully business will happen, but not so much that they'll just take the idea. So let's walk through the sorts of legal remedies that you currently have and essentially what you would have to do in order to make them work. And to that, especially for those of you who are here with me in Singapore, I can warmly recommend that there are actually some good resources on the IPOS website. That's the Intellectual Property Office of Singapore website. And you should now be able to see Introduction to IP appear here on the screen. I warmly commend you to take a look because it's an easy read, which is not always easy when it comes to the legal issues. Easy to get your head around. And it explains the various forms of intellectual property rights that exist in Singapore. When you scroll down on the IPOS site, you then arrive at this page over here. And you can see that there are certain types of registerable and non-registerable intellectual property or intangible assets available. Have a quick look at this graphic. Yep, and perhaps check it out in greater detail in your own time. Now, on the right-hand side are what we might call the very formalized forms of IP. Trademarks, for example. You can only use the little R in superscript on your brand if you have actually registered the trademark. You've gone to a lawyer, you've paid the fees, they've paid the IPOS fees, and now you have a registered trademark. Patents, that's usually an even more involved process because you actually have to publish the idea. You have to show people the idea, especially at the patent office, because then they obviously can then decide whether or not to grant you the patent. International patents usually take months, years even, in order for them to be granted. Not the sort of thing that you can really avail of if you're just going in for a pitch, let's say, of your handmade upcycled products, as we heard from one of you earlier on this call. Trademarks too. I mean, it's a good idea if you have a brand name to register the trademark. But in truth, if you are pitching an idea to a customer, you're now going to trademark it. If you're, let's say, a logo designer and you want to get this job from this customer, you want to design a logo, are you now going to trademark the logo before you sell it to them? Well, if they accept your logo, they'll want to trademark it. So you see, there are certain instances where trademarks and patents are very important, very useful. But in the ordinary course of pitching an idea, sometimes it's a little bit impractical. We have designs in here as well. Geographical indications. This is like when, for example, you purchase champagne. Only sparkling wine that actually comes from that part of France can call itself champagne. That's what it talks about here with geographical indications. And orchids in Singapore, very famous, and plant varieties can in fact also be registered. So far, so good. But look at the items on the left-hand side. These are non-registerable. And that's where the problem begins. Yes, the assets exist once they are created. But as somebody who's created them, as so many of you indicated earlier on, when we asked you what sort of ideas have you had stolen, you can see how things like copyright are easily ignored. I mean, if the customer is then just going to copy your photos, who's going to come after them with a big stick? You? Are you going to go after them? That's the theory. But there's so many complications as to whether that's actually going to work for you. I mean, if you are going to take somebody to court, there's, apart from the whole amount of time that you're spending on it, there's also the whole concern as to whether it'll actually succeed. We always want it to succeed, of course. We all think it will, or at least we hope it will. But will it? And that's what we're going to walk through next. Like, what actually happens? What options do we have when we take legal action? What's involved? What do we need to know? So let's take a look here at a comparison between what happens when you have to defend your IP rights retrospectively through the courts, or what happens if you were to PitchMark it. Here's the first one: cost. No matter how you slice and dice it, hiring a lawyer is going to be expensive. It'll cost you thousands. It's highly unlikely that you will take somebody to court and it'll cost you less than that. Even if you take the small claims tribunal, are they going to hear copyright infringements? And even then, there's the attendant cost, and it might not even just be the financial cost, but the time cost as well. PitchMark, on the other hand, is free. You can register for an account for free. You can upload your written expressions of your ideas for free, whether that's text, images, video, audio, or whatever other form you have. There is no charge. The only time that you pay is when you get paid. When you license your ideas, there is a small platform fee. Next, that you need to take into consideration when taking somebody to court is the time. Check this out. And not to mention the aggravation and the frustration and the fear that for some reason the court is going to find in favor of the party that you are taking to court. There's no guarantees. The courts are independent. They do their own thing, right? That's why we go to the courts, to have a third-person arbiter decide the case for us. But as the result, it's going to be uncertain what the outcome is. Now, with PitchMark, the aim is to deter IP theft before it even happens. So the idea is to discourage people, just like in that steering wheel lock example, from actually trying to steal your ideas to break in. It is a relatively pain-free experience, I have to say. Once you've created your document or video, whatever it is, you upload it to the PitchMark platform in a way that I'll show you in the next 20 minutes. And you then receive the certificate, which you send along with your drawing or sketch or AutoCAD design, whatever it is, to your customer, so that they receive not just the design, but also the piece of paper that says that you claim your IP rights. You're prepared to defend them. Don't mess with me. Move on to the next car. Then there's this point, which is sometimes not considered. When you take somebody to court, you can pretty much imagine that that's the end of the relationship. Now, of course, if they stole your idea to begin with, then perhaps you would have been prepared to walk away anyway. But in truth, if you have a customer who you're pitching something to, maybe it's an existing customer, and you're pitching something to them, as an upsell, let's say, right? Or an innovation compared to something that you've been providing them for a number of years already. Let's say the customer then decides to take your idea, and you decide you're not going to stand for it, you're going to take them to court. Do you think the existing business relationship will continue? Probably not, right? How, on the one hand, can we sue them? And then on the other hand, we just kind of carry on business as usual. It's not likely to happen. So once again, it is really about deterring IP theft, not even getting into that situation where the recipient thinks that they can walk away with your idea. But there's an additional reputational benefit, as it says here on the graphic. The reputational benefit is simply the fact that when you, even as a small company, or especially as a small company, when you front up with your PitchMark certificate, you're already punching above your weight. You're already indicating that you're far more professional than they might have expected from a small outfit like yours. You're demonstrating that you understand the process, and you know what you're doing, and you ought to be respected, even if you're just a three-person graphic design agency, let's say. So far from damaging your relationship when you sue people, the PitchMark approach allows you to build your relationship because you are now moving to eye level with even very large customers. You're demonstrating that you know what you're doing. All right, and now perhaps just one or two more points. Effectiveness. I mentioned this earlier. The court is independent. You can't tell them what to do. We certainly don't profess to. But the result is the uncertainty as to whether you will be able to get your claim heard in your favor, decided in your favor, and get some sort of compensation. When it comes to deterrence, this is a completely different story than what we are usually asked about jurisdiction. When we have people like you on this call, they often then ask, well, does it work in my jurisdiction? So let me drill down into that a little, because this is a very important point. What we're talking about here is people. We're talking about deterring people from stealing your ideas. We're talking about the prospective customer who's leaning back in the boardroom while you're giving your pitch, you're giving your presentation, is listening to your idea and is thinking, actually, I know somebody who could implement this for me far cheaper than you're proposing. This is the person who we are looking to influence. And so the aim here is deterrence. We're aiming here at the person who we hope to persuade not to rip off your idea. When, as part of your pitch, you're showing your PitchMark certificate, hopefully this prospective buyer will think twice and say, yeah, I have a friend who can do this much cheaper, but these guys seem to know what they're doing. And maybe I won't rip off their idea, or I'll have another conversation with them about how we can make this work. And of course, that's where the licensing feature of the PitchMark Ideas Exchange comes in, so that you are able to earn revenue from it. And we'll walk through how that works in a few moments. All right, so we're not talking here necessarily about the legalistic aspects of whether PitchMark works in your jurisdiction. The question is, does it work with people? No matter what jurisdiction they're in. And the short answer is yes. When you say to people, there is somebody watching you other than me as to whether you will steward my IP correctly, whether you'll do the right thing by me, that's the level of influence and persuasion we're looking to have on people everywhere, irrespective of jurisdiction. And then there is this final point here on the screen. What would you rather have? All the cost of time, money, and effort, all the frustration, not to mention the impact on the relationship, with an uncertain outcome? Is that the business you're in? Or are you in the business of generating ideas where you don't want to have to pick up fight with prospects and customers? So ultimately, that's the point of PitchMark. It is all about ensuring that the recipient respects you and respects your idea. All right. And we're also welcoming KN to the PitchMark webinar. Thank you for joining us today. And once again, I welcome any questions or comments you might have. You may simply drop them into Zoom chat or raise hand, and I'll be happy to actually have a conversation with you here on the PitchMark webinar. 24 minutes past the hour. In the next 20 minutes, before I take more of your questions, we're going to walk through what happens when you use the PitchMark platform. How do you, in fact, ensure that you're able to opt for deterrence and actually get paid for it? How do you actually get licensing fees from the prospective customer? You can register for free at PitchMark. Here is the QR code. And keep your mobile phone handy in case if you're registering now, it is free to register. You can walk along with me for how this actually works in practice. So I'm now going to walk you through that process live here on the show. So let's see now. We're going to share with you the screen right here. And you should now be able to see the PitchMark website. And of course, I have already logged in. You can see my name there in the top right corner. If you haven't yet registered, you may do so. Let me just bump up that for a while. So let's go to your account, and this is what your dashboard looks like. Now, in essence, every time you create a PitchMark certificate, you're then able to find that here in the platform. And I'll again demonstrate that to you in just a few moments. But let me just briefly walk you through one other critically important point, and that is down here, the preferred payment platform. Can you see that there at the bottom of the screen? Now, the payment platform is all about you getting paid. It is not for you to pay. It is about you getting paid. How do you wish to be paid? And right now, when you click Add a Method, you're able to set up with Stripe very easily so that when you receive licensing revenues, you're able to then receive that through your Stripe account. But let's walk through what this process looks like here in the platform. We generate a new certificate. This is now the first point where we have some concepts, perhaps written, text, video, audio, and you are now getting ready to pitch market. So first of all, what documents are you pitch marking? I'm going to autofill the details here. Let's say they're presentation materials. You can be more descriptive if you like. In fact, in general, the preference is that you do provide quite some detail so that the recipient is on notice that you are referring to this specific idea and them specifically, which is also why you see there in the second line, in this case, fill a text, but you would actually name the person who the idea is for. Now, this is quite important because it is not companies that rip off your ideas. It is individuals at those companies. You know, a large multinational probably does not have a policy to, be cavalier with the ideas that their vendors supply them. It is probably somebody within that company who, in the dead of night, shrouded in secrecy, kind of takes your idea and puts it into their own PowerPoint deck when next they present to the boss, for example, claiming the idea as their own. Nobody really knows except that one person. So my suggestion to you is that you actually name that person. Put them on notice. Because at this point, this is a very happy part of the transaction. They haven't ripped anything off. You're simply making or customizing, personalizing your pitch to this individual. The third line there is, again, something quite specific. What is the pitch for? In this case, is the document for a conference presentation? As I saw, one or two of you wrote earlier that you're in the training and consulting business. Maybe you're a coach. Well, perhaps what is the pitch for? Well, in this case, the documentation is for just such a training course. In fact, if you are a trainer, you'll know how easy it is for your students to snapshot your slides and then pass them off on their own, as their own. I mean, on occasion, I've even seen people listen to presentations and they then build their own internal learning management system course from your slides. Horrible what sometimes happens to your IP as a trainer. So once again, be specific. Who's the creator of the document? You see that there are my name and my details there, and then select the work category. So now for today, I'm going to put in training. Let's see, what should we put? Learning evaluation, facilitation and delivery, and let's call it here we go, polling design and delivery. So quite specific. As I scroll down, you'll now see at the top of the screen, hide from pitch feed, not recommended. You'll see the pitch feed on the home page, and it's designed to tell the world that you have had an idea and that you have shared it with this particular recipient who's named here. The idea itself is, of course, not shared. I think that goes without saying. But the point is to put it on the record that your idea exists and that you have shared it. Remember, people act very differently when they know they're being watched. So we're looking to give them the sense that they're being watched in the nicest possible way. You'll see there the allowed file formats, and there are actually quite generous allowances for the amount of space that you can use. And right now, as I quickly get my bearings over here, let's see, shall we go to this page here? And then we'll go over here. You see, I've got so many. Here we go. Why don't we use that one? And we add this file. In this case, it's a JPEG file, but as I mentioned, there could be any number of the others. And then we do invite you to declare that it is actually your work. If you do use ChatGPT or Gemini or any of those others, you might like to disclose that. Some jurisdictions are quite finicky about that. So you might like to show us how you generated that. Good. And then you hit upload, and within a few moments, your file will be uploaded. And when it is, it then appears in the dashboard, which you saw a little bit earlier over here, where you then have all of those various certificates. Oh, there it is. It's just popped in. There it is, the one at the top. That's the one we just did. All of them are listed. Now, it's important for you to know that we do not store the document. So you saw the upload function just now. It passes through the hashing process, which means that your idea, your graphic, music, text is now registered on the Tezos blockchain. But the file itself does not reside on our server. It continues to live only on your hard drive. So what you will then find here is really a repository of the certificates themselves. This is not going to be a repository of all the files. And when we are ready to now license this idea, that's when we click Send Offer. And we now get to the Ideas Exchange. And this is where the magic happens for now selling or licensing your idea to the intended recipient. And the scenario in this case might be that you are perhaps with your upcycled, handcrafted designs, you're now pitching it to somebody. Perhaps you've got a variety of people sitting around the boardroom table, and you're standing at the front of the boardroom, and you're running through your pitch, showcasing your designs, playing your videos. Well, before you do that, you will have come to PitchMark, you would have registered that, and then generated a certificate, because that is the certificate is in essence the way that you're going to show. This is the time and date at which I registered this idea. Now, as you're going through that pitching process, ordinarily, what choices do you give to the customer? Usually it's one of two choices. Choice number one is, please buy our designs. Please purchase our ideas. Please say yes to the pitch. And it will cost you, what would it be? $10,000? $50,000? Let's say $50,000 for whatever it is that you are pitching to them. This product, this service that you offer, you want this customer to hand over to you $50,000. So that's option one that you're giving them. Option two in the past has been that you don't get paid at all. The customer says, thanks, but no thanks. We've decided to head off in a different direction. We're not going to buy your idea for $50,000. You pack up, you go back, and now that's the end of the story. So that's the old way of doing things. The new way of doing things with the PitchMark Ideas Exchange is that you head off to this pitch. You have previously, before you arrived at the client's office, you will have PitchMarked all of your materials. You show your PitchMark certificate as part of your demonstration. And now you give the customer two different choices. Choice number one is still to pay you $50,000 to purchase your product or service. But choice number two is now for you to license your idea to them for a fraction of that price. Let's say $5,000. You're now saying to the prospect, it's okay, you don't have to buy this product from us, but you can license the idea. If you have somebody cheaper, or maybe a preferred vendor, or maybe some other kaki, some other friend who you think is going to do a better job than we can, okay, just pay us the $5,000 and we'll be gone. And this is an important choice. It's no longer a take it or leave it choice. This is now a high price, good value, I'm sure, but high price, or a low price choice. Now, the impact that this has on the prospective customer is, once again, they're sitting back and they're watching you do your pitch, and they're thinking, $50,000 is a bit much. I have a friend who could do this much cheaper. When you then say, you can just purchase this idea for $5,000, we'll license it to you right now. Here it is on the platform. We'll do it right this minute. Now they have less of a chance to steal the idea. In fact, later on, if you do end up taking this to court, you can now say, I did everything to try to get this customer on board, I offered them the full price. I even offered them a discounted rate just to license the idea. And they still ripped me off. If you don't present the customer with that higher or lower price choice, the customer is presented with a high price or I'm going to rip off the idea choice. The idea is to take that choice away from them by giving them a lower entry point. Now, what these prices are is ultimately for you to decide. In my example, I've simply chosen an arbitrary 10%. You might want to charge more if, let's say, you're an advertising agency and you've put in significant effort into creating the pitch to begin with. You might charge less. It's over to you to make that decision. But charge you must, because if you just hand over the idea, like you might have done in the past, here's our deck, here's our photos, here are our videos, and the client has a choice between a lot and stealing the idea. That's why they probably chose that. So let's walk through how the ideas exchange works in practice. We're here on this page, and the first thing is we enter the licensee's information, right? And earlier on, wasn't it this one here, right? Company Co. That was the name, wasn't it? And shall we just add here we go. Let's just add a phone number. Here's the email address. We've added that as well. The offer title, what should we put here? Well, let's see. That's all right. Recycled or upcycled materials. Pitch, let's just say. Price tag, 10,000, just for the sake of this conversation. And now all the terms and conditions you have agreed with the client. It's quite useful to be very specific, because if it's rather generic and you end up taking the certificate as part of the evidentiary materials to the court and it's not very specific, then the judge is like, well, they it looks similar, their ideas to yours, but you didn't really specify anything. Can you add some terms and conditions? Now, if you want to draw on a legal counsel to help you with that, of course, you're welcome to. But ideally, whatever you write here should not surprise the customer. Whatever you say in the pitch should then be keyed in here so that there's no ambiguity and you can both agree that, yes, this was what we talked about during our meeting. For now, I'm going to leave that blank. Then comes the deal type. Now, here we see licensing your creative work while you continue to own it and then transferring ownership. There might be some instances when you want to transfer the ownership altogether, such as if you've won a tender, let's say. And part of the tender stipulation is that any foreground IP generated as part of that project belongs to them, the customer. This might then simply be a formality to hand it over. But there you are. You can choose that if you wish. Most of the time, our suggestion at PitchMark is that you simply license the materials. And then come certain license conditions. Once again, I'll scroll down here. You can look at this for yourself when you register for your own free PitchMark account. So where does the license apply? Worldwide, or do you just want to select a few countries? Let's choose Singapore just for the fun of it. Is the license exclusive to this licensee? If you're shopping this idea around and the customer is aware that they're not the exclusive customer, you might like to say no. But sometimes, if you are licensing it to them and only then perhaps you can charge more. An exclusivity agreement. License validity, you see we've got a couple of dates pre-filled in here. It's up to your discretion as to how long you want that license to run. And then can they assign the license to somebody else? That might work, for example, if they're on licensing it to somebody to actually produce the coffee mugs where they're taking your designs, for example. Can they disclose details? Ordinarily, there's probably no great shame, but on occasion in doing so, right? But on occasion, you might have certain confidentiality clauses in your contract with this customer that would prompt you to say, no, you are not permitting them to disclose details. And then there are certain grants of rights, allowing them to reproduce the creative work. That would make sense if it is a t-shirt design or a coffee mug design. I mean, obviously, they'll want to reproduce the design on their coffee mugs. Are they allowed to publicly perform the creative work? Now, that might be if you are licensing a jingle or music or a video. Are you permitting them to show it in public? Perhaps that then has some implications too on the license terms and the price higher up on this page. Are you allowing them to distribute the creative work? Once again, this might apply if you are, let's say, writing a book, a script, a movie script, perhaps, and you want them to be able to distribute it. Could be that it would be that one. Or create adaptations or derivative works. Once you've completed all of these, you can see as I scroll up again, it's a fairly simple form, but it contains all the important things that ordinarily lawyers spend many pages writing. In this case, it's just a simple form. And when you then click Send Offer, you then get, or this fictitious Mr. Andrew Tan then receives the offer in their email. And this is, in essence, what I'm now going to show you is what that looks like. Because you do obviously want to have the client receive and agree to the idea. What does it look like when they do? So I'm now going to screen share that. Here we go. So when they receive an email, it'll look something like this. In this case, different name, but you get the idea. Different price as well. But this is in essence the email. And as I scroll down to the next one, all of the terms that you stipulated earlier on in that form that we just walked through together are then represented here, replicated, reproduced in this email. Do you remember how we checked all those boxes? Here they are. And the text is pretty much spelled out along with any other notes that you gave. At the bottom of the email, they then receive a review and accept offer button. And when they click that, they are taken through to the PitchMark site to register themselves as a client on the PitchMark platform. They are, of course, also invited to set up their 2FA for good cybersecurity stewardship. And then when they go to their dashboard, now they see that they have received that pitch. You can see the details there. Status pending, because now they need to pay for that. They're able to scroll down and see again the same details that you put into the form, as well as the details that were then in the email where they clicked to get to this page. And now they've reached the bottom of that particular page on their dashboard, and you can see that they can click accept and pay. And when they do, that's when they get taken over to Stripe. They add their credit card details, and hey presto, it's now been accepted. And offer accepted, your certificate is being generated. This now means that the recipient who has paid you that money, $100 in this screenshot, $10,000 in our earlier examples, $100,000, let it be millions. They now have a certificate that says, yes, they've paid that money, and they can now say legitimately that they have licensed your idea. And in your dashboard, it now says that as well, that the offer has been accepted and the money has gone into your Stripe account. So that's broadly, and the express version of walking you through how the platform works. And once again, the offer, the opportunity is now there for you to sign up for the PitchMark account yourself. It is free. It's free to generate certificates, and you can pretty much start licensing straight away. Don't forget to sign up your Stripe account before you do so. All right, it's 1:45, and it's time to perhaps wrap up a couple of additional points, but also an opportunity to take your questions, comments, or anything else you'd like to raise in relation to IP rights. Now's the time to add them here in Zoom chat, or to raise hand, and perhaps we can actually have an oratory chat. We can actually talk to each other, in other words, to answer your questions. All right, first questions popped in. What if the client steals the idea and makes slight changes to it? Yes, thank you for asking that, Shakir. And you're right, of course. We're dealing with people here after all. You know, the reason why there is such a thing as litigation in the courts, with people spending thousands, tens of thousands of dollars, not to mention the hours, is because somebody on the other side thought that they could get away with it. So whenever we're dealing with people, how do we make this absolutely watertight? Why is it that there is still so much litigation around IP? If the law was watertight, then there shouldn't be an issue, right? It's not watertight because, again, it is people. And there's no amount of technology or law, for that matter, that's necessarily going to help you deter IP theft. What are we going to do? Hold a gun to their head? People will just want to walk away with ideas. The key is to make this as difficult for them as possible, to give them the guiltiest of consciences as you can, to signal as much as you can that you know what you're doing. Don't mess with me. We're working with people, so it has to be all about influence and persuasion. And there is certainly some retrospective things that hopefully you can do in the courts, but wouldn't it be nice if you just prevented all of that to begin with, so that they thought twice about it? Thought twice about making those little changes, Shakir, as you mentioned, and maybe just have an honest conversation. You know, part of the problem is that when you present an idea and somebody thinks that they're just going to tweak a few points, it's because you're not signaling that you're taking the idea seriously. I mean, think about now the way you do pitches. Do you say anything about intellectual property rights? Is there a copyright notice that you draw their attention to? Do you talk about who owns the IP to the ideas? Chances are these conversations aren't even happening because you're probably just all too happy just to have the opportunity to pitch to them. You don't want to say anything that is going to deter them from saying yes. The result is that we don't talk about IP. And somebody around the table is going, well, that's a very interesting idea. I might just tweak a few things and see if I can get away with ripping it off. So at the very least, the PitchMark certificate is designed to show that you take it seriously. And yes, you are prepared to have that conversation. It has to be said as well, just one final point, that any prospect who doesn't want to have an IP conversation, any prospect who seems a little bit wishy-washy about IP. Yeah, it's kind of a legal thing. You know, we here in the marketing department or whatever, you know, don't really take care of that sort of issue. Do you really want to deal with them? You know, if somebody is reluctant to talk about IP, then can we really expect them to be open and upfront about IP stewardship? To some extent, if you don't get certain projects or work as a result of showing them the PitchMark certificate, you've probably dodged a bullet. You've probably done yourself a favor. You've probably just surfaced the unspoken intention that they had all along to rip off your idea. Thank goodness they are not now becoming a customer. So to some extent, the PitchMark certificate helps you have those conversations. Once again, 10 minutes to the hour. Please get your questions in soon. Once again, you can unmute or just key it in here into Zoom chat. You can also raise your hand and I'll come to your question in just a few moments. Shakir, you're welcome for the question. Thank you. Given that we can create the idea using AI, if the AI gives similar response to other prompters, not knowing that we have registered it in PitchMark, do we have some sort of claim over it? Well, Shakir, that is an excellent question and depends a little bit on the jurisdiction you are in, meaning which country are you in? If you are in Singapore, then I would strongly encourage you to investigate the Copyright Act of 2021. Now, I'm neither lawyer nor here to give you legal advice, but in essence, what the Copyright Act of 2021 does is allow AI scrapers to pass over your material and learn from it. That's broadly what is now permitted. And there are various jurisdictions. In some countries, this is not permitted at all. There is also more detail to the Singapore position. The AI crawler is able to learn from any publicly available sources. unless you have specifically taken steps to hide your materials away from the prying eyes of the AI crawler. If you've, in other words, determined and put a big sign out the front to say, don't crawl here, you've taken steps to, for example, put your materials behind a paywall, then also the AI is not entitled to your materials. But again, read up on that and seek legal advice if necessary. But in essence, it is much easier in Singapore for the generative AI engines to take information wherever they find it. There's another question that's often related to this, and that is whether or not work that you create using AI is then also protected by copyright law. Well, about 50 minutes ago, I talked about the monkey that took a selfie, and then the monkey had the copyright. The short answer is that different countries handle this differently. And I would strongly encourage you to PitchMark your AI-generated work anyway. Now, the reason I say that is that even though in the United States, for example, you cannot claim copyright over something that you asked Gemini, Claude, Copilot, ChatGPT to produce. However, remember, this isn't just about the law. This is about dissuading the person sitting around the boardroom table with you, the one who's listening to your pitch. We're looking to influence, first and foremost. We're looking to signal to them we take our IP seriously. Whether or not you generated it with AI, the fact is that you came up with it. You prompted the AI. You presumably prompted the AI to such an extent that you demonstrated your own expertise. You put your own effort into that prompt. Maybe you'd like to PitchMark the prompt. It's also possible. Now, if the client then says, yes, but hang on a minute, you've used AI to generate this image. Okay, now you can have a conversation about that. Now you can talk, negotiate as to how much your image should be worth, even though you generated it with AI. Now you're having a conversation that otherwise you would never have had. And isn't that the point that I've been making for the past hour? That we often miss these opportunities to talk about these things because we're too fearful that somebody will not buy our idea and then they rip it off in the process. Okay, just a handful. I'm just going to check the time. Just a couple of minutes now left before we wrap up. So final opportunity for you to raise any questions or comments. You can do so once again just by raising your hand or perhaps dropping your question here. And Hong Sing, hello. Thank you for dropping in this question. You're a feng shui jewelry designer, and you'll be launching a semi-personalized K-gold, I'm assuming that's a multi-carat gold gemstone jewelry piece for each individual client to be launched in a public campaign. Hong Sing, that sounds like a fantastic product. Can't wait to see it. You're writing here, we used a jewelry AI app to create your hand-drawn jewelry drawing, right? Can I use PitchMark to protect our semi-customized design from competitors? Well, once again, Hong Sing, I'm loath to give you legal advice. Designs can be registered with IPOS in Singapore or My IPO in Malaysia or whatever the intellectual property authority is in your country. So check that out. If you can get legal protection through a patent, trademark, a registered design, and some of those other things we talked about earlier, right? You remember the orchids. Then do it. You know, create go through the expense, find a lawyer, pay thousands, get the registration. It's probably worth it. But how can you kind of signal without waving that document around? How can you signal with a simple certificate that you have taken care of your IP rights. Why not do both? PitchMark is free. And if you do then have one of those competing jewelry designers who's really interested, then you can always say, well, hey, you can license the design. Just, let's negotiate the price. I'll send you the offer this afternoon. It'll arrive in your inbox shortly. I'll send it to you. Right? And then you use PitchMark to transfer it. Hong Sing, please do keep us informed. Please join the PitchMark community. We'd love to see it. And maybe we can even give you some airtime through PitchMark for your designs. I'd be thrilled to do that. Shakir, can I use PitchMark if I am not based in Singapore? Thank you, Hong Sing, for joining. Can I use PitchMark if I'm not based in Singapore? Absolutely. Because remember, Shakir, we're talking about people. And people the whole world over are pretty much the same, trying to get away with things that they can. And that's why we have to make sure that the steering wheel lock is on the idea. We're talking about influencing people. Now, if you are looking to transact, of course, you can do that through the platform as well. So yes, you can be anywhere in the world. Since we launched, in fact, we've discovered members in every country. We have many users in the Philippines and Indonesia in particular, largely presumably because that's where IP theft is even more rampant than in other countries. But we also have many members, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, other parts of Southeast Asia. We have users in the United Kingdom, the United States, certain Gulf countries as well. South Africa, we've had people join us on this call from South Africa in the past as well. So yes, people from all around the world. Okay, quick check of the time. It is exactly top of the hour now. Thank you for all your questions and comments. Thank you for being with me here for the last hour. And we look forward to seeing you on the PitchMark platform. You can see my colleague Kieran has also added service@pitchmark.net in the Zoom chat. And we welcome your comments, questions by email, and look forward to continuing the conversation with you offline. Thanks again for joining. Bye for now.